No man knows when or how he will die. However, we all try to protect ourselves from the main causes, like wars, diseases, accidents, etc. But what happens when death comes from factors that no one can predict? Let's have a look at the most bizarre deaths in history, starting with Antiquity. Draco, the lawgiver, was an Athenian citizen of aristocratic descent, who was commissioned by the Athenians to restructure the city's legal system, abolishing the oral laws and tribal feuds that plagued Athens. In 621 BC, Draco first wrote the new laws on marble tablets, which he placed in the agora. These laws were very harsh, and since then, the expression draconian laws has been synonymous with the particularly strict laws. Around 600 BC, Draco found himself in a crowded theater in Aegina, where he gave a speech. After he finished, the spectators, showing their support, began to throw him clothes, from cloaks to hats, as was customary at the time. The pile of clothes that covered Draco was so big that he suffocated and died. Milon of Croton was an Olympic wrestler who lived in the 6th century BC and was renowned for his strength. It is said that he consumed 20 pounds of bread, 20 pounds of meat, and 10 liters of wine every day. Everyone feared him because of his imposing presence and strength. Milon used to break things and lift heavy objects for showing. One day, Milon was passing through a forest when he saw a cracked tree trunk that had almost split in two. Then, he put his hands in the crack because he wanted to prove that he could tear the tree in half. But his hands got stuck, and he was trapped, unable to free himself. He was stuck there for days, until a pack of wolves appeared and finished him off. Heraclitus of Ephesus was a philosopher of the 6th century BC, known for the idea of constant change that governs the universe as a law, but also notorious for his antisociality. He avoided contact with other people as much as possible, and went so far as to isolate himself in the desert for long periods, living on plants and herbs that he gathered himself. Heraclitus suffered from dropsy, a painful and debilitating disease that caused swelling of the soft tissues due to the accumulation of fluid. Doctors were unable to cure him or even alleviate his suffering. Then, he thought he would have to find a way to draw the moisture from his body. The idea he decided to try was this. He would cover himself in cow dung and lie in the hot sun so that the temperature of the dung would draw the harmful fluids from his body. So, one hot morning, Heraclitus covered himself with dung and lay down in the sun. But, unfortunately for him, he fell asleep and woke up at night. Soon, he realized that he was surrounded by wild dogs and tried to escape. But the sun and heat had petrified the dung, and he could not move, as he was like wearing a full body cast. So, the dogs devoured the trapped man. Aeschylus was one of the most important tragic poets of ancient Greece. He lived and became renowned in Athens, while he also took part in the Persian Wars as a simple soldier, which he considered the most important moment of his life. In 456 BC, he visited Sicily for the second time, specifically the city of Gela, probably for the presentation of one of his works. According to tradition, an eagle flew over and dropped a turtle on him, because it mistook his bald head for a rock. This kind of eagle, which used to drop living things from above, wanted to break the turtle's shell, so that it could eat it. But instead of the turtle, he broke the head of the great tragedian. Empedocles of Acragas was one of the greatest intellectuals and most talented physicians of his time. He was said to be so charismatic that at every appearance, people flocked to him and asked for help, from healing the sick to giving them prophecies. All this worship made him believe that he had divine powers. When people refused to believe in his divinity, he decided to prove it by jumping into the active volcano of Etna. He stated that he had become immortal and would emerge unscathed. So, he jumped into the volcano and was never seen again. Zeuxis from Heraclea was a great Greek painter of extraordinary ability. It is said that his paintings were so realistic that birds came down from the sky to eat the fruits of his works. At one point, an old woman commissioned him to draw a painting of the goddess Aphrodite, using her as a model. When he saw the finished painting, and the depiction of the beautiful goddess as an old woman, he found it so absurd and ridiculous, that he laughed so hard, that he choked and died. Some years later, Chrysippus of Soli, one of the most important Stoic philosophers, was at a party. There, he amused himself by drinking copious amounts of undiluted wine. At one point, his eye fell on a donkey, trying to eat some extremely sticky figs. To the drunken Chrysippus, this sight was one of the most hilarious things he had ever seen. Then, in tears of laughter, he shouted, "This donkey needs undiluted wine to wash away these figs," and gave him wine to drink. The sight of the drunken donkey, chomping on the sticky figs, was so funny to Chrysippus, that he literally died laughing. Philitas of Kos was a well-known writer and poet during the early Hellenistic period, while he also was a teacher of Ptolemy II Philadelphus of Egypt. He was the first case of a grammar police, since he was obsessed with studying words, and did not let other people's slightest mistake go unnoticed. If he heard someone misusing a word, or making a grammatical error, he would spend days writing entire texts about why the word had been used incorrectly, what word or phrase should have been used, and so on. His mania for correcting others overwhelmed him, to the point where he stopped sleeping and eating. So, he ended up starving to death, while preparing one of his usual texts. Claudius Drusus was the eldest son of the future Roman Emperor Claudius. As a member of the imperial family, i.e. the Julio-Claudian dynasty, he had a bright future ahead of him. Shortly before he came of age, he got engaged to the daughter of Lucius Aelius Sejanus, the powerful commander of the Praetorians. Some days after the engagement, Claudius Drusus was playing with a piece of pear, which he was throwing in the air, and was catching in his mouth. In one of these motions, the pear stuck in his throat, and he died of suffocation. In 283 AD, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius Carus was with his army in Mesopotamia, fighting against the Persians. The campaign was going exceptionally well for the Romans, and Carus led the army across the Tigris River, into the heart of the Persian Empire. But, one night, a heavy storm broke out. A bolt of lightning struck the emperor's tent, and burned him, ending the hitherto unstoppable Roman advance. The event was considered a sign from the gods, according to which, the highest limit of the empire would be the Tigris River, and no Roman should cross it. In 375 AD, the Roman Emperor Valentinian I was on a campaign against the Quadi on the Danube. After some liquidation operations against them, the Quadi sent a delegation to the emperor, asking for peace, in return for providing new men for the Roman army. Valentinian agreed, but the Quadi requested an audience with him before they left. At the meeting, they stated that the conflicts broke out due to the Romans, because they built forts within their territory. Furthermore, they stated that autonomous Quadi groups, not necessarily bound by the chiefs who signed treaties with the Romans, could attack them at any time. The attitude of the Quadi enraged Valentinian so much, that he began to shout angrily at their envoys. Then, a blood vessel in his head burst from the tension, and he suffered a stroke and died. These were the 10 bizarre deaths that stood out during antiquity. Which of the above do you think is the weirdest? Do you know of other cases that could be on this list? Write your opinion down in the comments.